told a story. I'm also going to tell a story about how I got involved in what I do and what drives me to want to do more of what I do. So I came to the United States when I was 18. My father worked in the Senegalese embassy as part of the military attaché team. Back home, I had everything I wanted. My dad has a huge house, uh, two maids. My brothers and sisters went to school with a driver. It is when I came to the United States that I really found out what it was to be missing all of that. In other words, everything was fine for me until I went to college. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I attended the University of South Carolina. With very little resources, I went to school with people who were very well off, had their tuitions paid months ahead of time. When myself and a cousin and I worked two jobs, three jobs, played on the soccer team, had a partial scholarship, so we had to find ways to pay for our own tuition. And for me, I would consider myself to be very lucky, but it is when I went to college that I really found out what challenges there are. And I lived through them. Remember when, I would go nights, days during the month of Ramadan where I wouldn't have any food in my stomach. I had very little money to survive. My budget was $15 a week that I was earning, and I earned that by coaching a young lady named Robin, coach her soccer on Wednesdays. Her mother paid me $15 a week. That was my entire budget. My dad didn't send me money to go to school. Everything I had to earn myself. So that $15 was everything I had for that week. And a cousin and I, we lived on bread and spaghetti, basic. We lived in a neighborhood, small town, where there was a very cheap store where with $5 we could buy food for weeks. So that's how we survived. My bed this carpet was a lot softer than where I slept for many nights. And this wasn't just for weeks, this was for years. You can imagine 4 years of college, very little money. When I bought my books for the semester, I only bought my books after the first midterm exam was over because I had to work to earn the money that I had to use to pay for my books. And by that time, I failed either the first test, so had to catch up when everybody else had everything they needed. So I went through a very tough time in college. You can imagine, people think everybody in Africa is so poor, but I had to come to the United States to experience what poverty was really about, to experience how you want to do well in life, but you don't have all the resources. So this is the reason why, I overcame that. I had a coach who was very tough on me. Whenever you go and complain, he would say, well, he was from Nigeria, by the way. And he would always talk about how, well, no one said it was going to be easy. That's why not everybody's doing it. That's how he sort of responded to that. So when I finally graduated in 4 years later with a degree in political science, I had an opportunity to come to the District of Columbia to work through a Capital City Fellowship Program, which is essentially you work for the mayor and you rotate in different agencies for 6 months at a time and you work on projects. And it wasn't by accident that I chose the Mayor's Office on African Affairs because I wanted to take my own experiences as an African immigrant who went to college here with very little resource to help other African immigrants in the District of Columbia, in the United States, have access to every other resource that everyone else has access to. Oftentimes we think integration is a challenge in our community because we think we are Africans and we sort of a little too shy to compete for certain jobs because we think, well, I'm an immigrant, and so I don't want to go too much into it, but I just wanted to share what motivated me to be where I am today, and hopefully during the conversation, I'll get to share more about what I do and how we help other immigrants advocate for resources and develop capacity for entrepreneurs. The fact that African immigrants are better educated than any other immigrant groups, but unemployment in our community is very high. And that deals with the issues of brain waste and brain drain. Brain waste is the concept of African immigrants who are
pharmacists in Kenya or in Ghana, but when they come to the United States, their degrees aren't being recognized. So they end up working as cab drivers, or they end up working in hotels. And those are issues that affect all of us, because someone who should be working in a job that pays $100,000, for example, that person should be paying more money in taxes, right? That person should be able to invest in a business to hire others. But that one person is now working as a cab driver making $45,000. That person pays less money in taxes. That's not good for government, because governments rely on taxes to operate. So those are the issues that I found in the research. Other issues is the fact that when you look at rates of cancer incidences among African immigrant women here in the United States, it is very similar to what we find back in Africa, because it's very cancer incidences among first-generation African immigrants tend to be very similar to what we find back home. And the situation is that when you look at incidences, you find that the rates it is now in Africa is higher than it was recorded in the second U.S. National Survey of 1947 in the United States. It is higher now in Africa than it was back in the U.S. in 1947. So those are the issues that we've worked to engage our government to be able to understand the issues, because when we talk about accountability, we talk about advocacy, and we talk about engaging citizens to, the issue that I find is that policymakers cannot solve our problem if they know what the problem is in the first place. So we have to work to educate them on the issues that we face as African immigrants, because that's what the Latino community does, that's what the Asian community does. But when we come to our community, the challenge is Nigerians are doing something in their corner, Ghanaians are doing something in their corner, South Sudanese are doing something in their corner, and that weakens us. So we've been working to engage citizens. One example I can give you to close with that is, the Mayor's Office of African Affairs, for the past few years, we noticed that the budget for the agency is a lot less than it is for other ethnic minorities. So that research that I conducted, and along with our effort with the community, we've engaged policymakers to tell them why they should increase the budget, why they should give us more staff, why they should give us grant-making authority to fund our nonprofit organization. And that has been so successful that for the past 2 years, the agency has received over $100,000 to fund our nonprofit organization. So that's been an example that I wanted to give you. So I don't want to take too much time. I'm going to let someone else take over, and then we'll go from there.